with this special program that we want to share with you that is called Yucataneando in Good Health. That is a very, very interesting program. Then we want to share how you can make your smile great in the Mayan land and really have this conversation with Yaroslava Botello, Natalia Bosa from the Medical Connections, and Guillermo Trujillo, that is an expert in the dentistry area, and having this conversation open to the public and really explore how people can fly to Yucatan, enjoy the time, have a great treatment, and take as a vacation in some way in the meantime that you recover. Are you ready, Yaroslava? Ready to start sharing this great news for our audience?
Oh, yes, of course. Thank you very much, Jorge. Thank you for the invitation. Well, as you say, we are very excited to share who we are, our business model. Well, basically, what we do is connect patients from another countries with doctors and hospitals of different specialty. These doctors and facilities, of course, are certified, but we have a solid commitment to comply with the medical ethical values. In Mexico, is a very good question, is a very good reason, but sometimes the patient has a lot of doubts. But well, mainly our recommendation is linking to our work experience in the medical environment for more than 15 years, because we have experience working into the surgery room, supply of materials, in hospital administration, even in insurance policies, for example. But the other hand, we have alliance with hotels, houses furnished for the recovery of our visitors, laboratories, nurseries, and we have a special vans for the transfer of our patients, etc. And we have also a travel agency.
In that sense, it's a complete mix that Natalia can tell you a little bit more about that.
Yes. Thank you, Jorge, for the invitation. As Yaroslava said, we are very excited to share with you and with your audience. That's true. We have an alliance with a big corporate travel company. It's Archer Travel, which that means that we have a very good prices on accommodations, tours, and flights. So if you decide to come to Yucatan, you can leave everything in our hands, sure that you will have the best options for you and for your treatments and for your trip. Now I want to introduce you to the dental specialist, Guillermo Trujillo, who has the following specializations. He is a cosmetic dentistry, dental examinations, a dental hygienist, dental technician. He does Invisalign, and he's an orthodontics. He will explain some dental procedures as well as the steps to follow for each them. Thanks, Guillermo, for being with us and for the next chat.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. So I am going to share the screen, and please let me know if
it's correct.
Okay. Can you see it?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Almost there.
Yes, you can see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So I am going to start with some with this presentation, trying to explain a little bit how we used to manage these kind of things, because it's different when a patient lives here than when a patient wants to come here only to get dental or medical attention, like you said. So if in some point I am going to give you a lot of or a little bit of information today, so if in some point you have any question, you can interrupt me. We can go back and I can I can try to explain the questions that probably you're going to have. So, okay, like you see in like you see in this first diapositive and this first page, I put the workflow that we usually do when a patient contacts us. So the first thing that we have to do is when a patient contacts us, when a patient write us or send us an email, the first thing that we usually do is we ask them for a video call. This first video call is to try to explain, or in first place, to know the patient. In second thing, we do video call to try to know all their expectations that a patient can have, and to try to be precise with the treatment plan that they are looking for. It's very important for us, this first video call, because in this video call, we try to figure it out how we're going to manage the things with the patient. So the second step that we usually do with the patients is we ask them for a study, usually a panoramic X-ray or a tomography. A tomography is a 3D study that allow to the specialist in implants see if the patient is candidate to get an implant, because we have to make a good diagnosis in order to make a good treatment, or in order to elaborate a good treatment for the patient. So these studies allow us to have a big picture of the patient before they come. So the tomography is a 3D study that allows us to see if the patient has enough bone, if the bone is thick, if it's narrow, if the patient is going to require a bone graft, for example, because the treatment plan is going to change if the patient is going, for example, if the patient is going to wear a bone graft, or if the patient is not going to require a bone graft. And a panoramic X-ray is the big X-ray that allows us to see, or to have, this study allows us to have a big picture of all the teeth of the patient. So it's very important for us to have it before the patient comes. Sometimes the patients ask us for a budget, or they ask us, okay, Guillermo, how many trips my treatment is going to require? Can you give me a precise budget? So it's difficult for us to be precise with them if we don't have all these studies, and if we don't make this first video call with the patient. So for us, like Natalia and Jaros know, it's very important, try to be clear with the patients from the beginning. We always want to be very clear, very transparent about how we are going to manage the treatments. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult for us, try to be precise if we don't have all these things, or all these things before the patient comes. So the second step, and very important in this kind of process, is ask to the patient and study. These studies like the tomography and a panoramic X-ray. So after that, we try to make a treatment plan with all the studies in our hands, and we try to elaborate a process, or we try to elaborate a treatment plan with times, with trips, depending on what the patient told us in the first video call. I don't know if you are following me until or so far. Do you have any question?
No, go ahead. It's great.
All good?
Keep going.
Okay. Okay, excellent. So in the third step, we usually make a third virtual meeting to organize the dates and the treatments that we are going to manage in the first trip. So in this third virtual meeting, we try to organize everything before the patients come. For example, if Natalia lives in US and she's going to come here, so we try to organize everything with Natalia. For example, okay, Natalia, you're going to require 3 root canals, 3 crowns, 3 posts, probably 2 implants. So the third meeting is going to work, or we're going to use this meeting to try to determine or to be precise with all the things that we're going to try to do the first trip. So, for example, Natalia, as soon as you arrive, we are going to make an appointment with the specialist in root canals. He's going to check you, and if he can start with something that day, he's going to do it. And second day or third day, you're going to see to the specialist in prosthesis in order to start with this thing. So in this third virtual meeting, we try to figure it out how many days she's going to be here the first trip. So this third meeting is going to work for us to try to be precise with all the things that we are going to involve in the first trip. Okay? And the second step will be the first trip or the first appointment with us. So this step involves when the patient arrives with us. So usually the first appointment, we use this first appointment to make a checkup, only to compare this checkup physically with all the things that we elaborate before. So we try to cross these things to see that all is good, okay? If we have to change, if we need to make some change, we usually do it in that point, because it's the beginning of the treatment. So that first trip, we try to forward with all the things that we can, taking in count the time that the patient is going to be here. And before the patient leaves, like you can see here, before the patient leaves, we try to organize everything for the second trip. Like you can see here, in this appointment, we prepare everything for the next trip. So we prepare everything for the second trip. For example, times, when Natalia is going to come back again here with us, how many days we require for the second trip, and all these kind of things. And next step would be following visits to continue with the treatment. So in the second trip, okay, Natalia is going to come for the second trip. Before, we try to figure it out, everything for that trip. She comes here again for the second trip. We do all the treatments that we planned for that trip. And then if she requires another trip, we figure it out in this second trip. We try to organize everything for the third trip. And we continue in that way. So the most important thing for us is these first 3 steps, because these three steps are going to give us the vision and the way we have to manage the things with each patient. Because remember that each patient is very particular, and each patient has different requests. Each patient has different needs. So for us, these 3 steps are very important, because these 3 steps are going to give us a guide or the way that we have to follow with each patient. It's not the same if a patient tells me, for example, Guillermo, I want to get 2 implants done. If a patient tells me, for example, Guillermo, I want to get a full mouth restoration or I need root canals in all my teeth, or I want to get a bleaching, or I want, so we have or we need to make a treatment plan that fits for each patient. Okay? So I don't know if you have any questions so far. All good?
Everything.
Okay. So I am going to jump to this part of the presentation that I believe is important for the patients, because usually when a patient comes here to get dental attention, they usually call us because they are looking for implants, some kind of prosthesis, or root canals, or something of the prosthetic area. So for us was important try to mention all these things, because the patient usually asks us for this kind of topic. Okay, I put in this part of the presentation the work scheme, implants, and times. So this case is taking in count that the patient is not going to require bone graft, okay? So let's suppose that we already planned the first contact with the patient. We make the first video call. In this video call, the patient told us that he or she is going to require implants. She or he sent us the tomography. We already checked the tomography and we saw that everything is good in order to place the implant. And after that, we made the third virtual meeting. So everything is set for the first trip, okay? So the patient arrives. Usually we try to see the patient as soon as he arrives or as soon as she arrives. Usually in this part of the treatment, when a patient is going to get an implant, the first trip is going to involve 15 to 21 days average. And this first trip is only to place the screw. Is the first part of the process, okay? So this is taking in count that the patient is not going to require something more. If the patient requires something more, so probably the things are going to change a little bit. So that's why it's very important make a good treatment plan from the beginning. So in this trip, the patient is going to be here 15 to 21 days only to place the screw and to see that everything is good before he or she leaves. So after that, usually we have to wait a period of time between 2 to 4 months after this first trip. And the second step or the second trip is going to involve the prosthetic part. The prosthetic part usually requires 2 to 3 weeks to finish with the crown placement process. Remember, when we are going to place an implant, first we have to place the screw, and over the screw we have to place the crown or the prosthetic part, the implant, okay? So in theory, after this second trip, everything is going to be finished. If nothing happens during this time, in theory, everything is going to be finished. So this is talking about a treatment where we're going to place an implant and everything or all the variables are good, taking in count that all is good, okay? Any questions so far?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
The implants has some warranty?
Yes, okay. Remember that if the implant is going to fail, that or a lot of factors are involved in this kind of thing. The implant has guarantees when a patient follow us or follow all the instructions that the specialist gave him or her. For example, if the implant has a manufacturing defect, or if something happened during the placement of the implant. Usually the doctor gives us this kind of guarantee, but first we have to be precise. Why was the reason? Because the implant failed. It's not the same if the implant failed, for example, and it's just an example, because a patient smokes very often or a lot, that because something happened during the process. So we have to be precise in, this would be the first step. Try to be precise why the implant failed, and based on that, we can see if the specialist in implants or if the brand of the implant is going to give us a guarantee. But yes, try to answer your question. Yes, usually yes, give us a guarantee if something happened during the process, or if, for example, the implant has a defect for manufacturing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other question? All good? Okay.
Yes.
So in this part of the presentation, we wanted to put the work scheme when a patient requires bone graft. It's very similar than this part of the presentation, but in this kind of process, we're going to require 3 trips, no 2, because the first trip is going to work, or is going to help us to put the bone graft. So first step would be place the bone graft, and usually we ask to the patients to be here 15 to 21 days in order to see that everything is good before they leave. After that, usually we have to wait 4 to 6 months after the first trip. Remember that when we place bone graft, we have to give to the body a period of time in order to heal. So it's important to wait this period of time, 4 to 6 months, in order to see that everything is good. Usually, before the second trip, we ask to the patient another tomography to see if the bone graft is good before to place the screw or before to place the implant. If everything is good, we organize the second trip. This second trip, like we saw before, is to place the screw, placement of the screw. And the average stay that we require is usually the same, 15 to 21 days, 15 to 21 days. And after that, like we saw before, we make the third trip. And usually we have to wait 2 to 4 months after the second trip. Like we saw before, this part of the trip is, or this trip is to put the crown that goes over the implant, is the prosthetic part. And the average that we require is 2 to 3 weeks. Sometimes, Jorge, Natalia, and Yaros, we can make this kind of process in less time. But for us, it's better to have more time than if we ask the patient, please, we need to come here, and then it's better for us to have more time than less time. So it's better if at the end we finish before than if at the end we see we require more time. So sometimes these dates are not precise because sometimes we can make the work in less, but this is the average to try to see that everything is good. Questions so far?
In that sense, what should be the best approaches? For instance, I need to do some insertion in one of my teeth, and there is any alternatives that I can reduce the amount of trips or doing some kind of this, taking the plaques or the X-rays or whatever technology that you use it here in the US and then send them to you in a way to have a much easier and better treatment?
Sorry, so your question is that if you can get your X-rays there and then you are going to send us the studies?
That's correct.
Yes, actually, like we saw here, we usually ask to the patient these studies before they come. Because remember that these 3 steps, these 3 steps, step 1, step 2, and step 3 is before the patient comes. And is to try to organize everything in a good way before they arrive. So yes, answering your question, I don't know if I understood you good, but yes, you could get the studies there and you could send us the studies before you come.
Yes, because in that sense, I can speed up the way. In that sense, just to try to make a summary, is if I'm going to have that treatment, how many times I need to travel to Merida?
That is going to depend on the treatment that you require. For example, like we saw here, if you are going to require, for example, a simple implant and everything, all the rest is good, you are going to require 2 trips, 1 trip and 2 trips. But if you are going to require an implant with bone graft, you are going to require 3 trips. So that's why it's very important this part of the process, because these 3 steps are going to give us the guide that we have to follow with your treatment plan. Because not all the patients, Jorge, ask us for the same things. So these 3 steps is going to, or are going to help us to be precise with all the things that you are telling me about times, about trips, about budget. The first thing that we have to do, even if the patient lives here, if when the patient arrives to the clinic, we have to make a good treatment plan. And to do that, we have to, sometimes we have to ask to the patient a tomography or a panoramic X-ray. The difference, Jorge, when a patient doesn't live here is that we need to be more precise before the patient comes, because we don't have the chance to solve any kind of problem when a patient is not here anymore. So that's why it's very important to make a good diagnosis. And that's why we like to do this first video call. We like to ask to the patients these studies, and we like to do this third video call to try to be precise before the patient comes. Remember that right now, Jorge, with all the technology that we have, it's easy for the patient, and including me, to enter to Google and try to see how the process is going to be. But sometimes it's a little bit different, the things that we see on internet than the reality. For example, if a patient is going to want an implant, we have to wait between one step and the other one in order to see that everything is good and in order to see that everything is healed before we place the crown. So unfortunately, in the dental area or in the medical area, we have to follow some steps, and between that step, we have to wait a period of time in order to make a successful treatment. Remember that we are looking for we try to take in count three things when a patient is going to get dental attention with us. First thing, we want the patient at the end of the treatment be happy. Second thing, we want to make a successful treatment. And third thing, we try to make a long-term treatment plan. So that's why it's very important, the diagnosis, then the treatment plan, and then we can start with the things. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, that's very good. Here some people ask me directly, not through the chats in the online, ask me if that process can be done also for Canadian people.
Yes, of course. Actually, we have a lot of people from US and from Canada.
Okay.
The way, Jorge, how we can manage the things, and sometimes the people have the opportunity to do that, and for us it's more comfortable and it's easier, is instead of these steps, we make a first trip of 5 or 6 days in order to know the patient physically. And in that trip, we know, in first place, we know the patient physically. The second step, or the second thing, is that we can check and we can organize everything in a better way because we have the patient here. So the other way to manage these kind of things is, instead of these three things, we jump to the first trip, and this first trip is going to work for us like a trip of exploration. That trip is going to work to make a treatment plan, to talk with the patient about times, days, about the money, about everything, and the patient can get here these studies, because I understand that here these studies are cheaper. For example, very soon we're going to have a patient that decide to come here for this first trip because for her it's cheaper to get here the tomography and the panoramic that try to get it there. So she told me, Guillermo, if I want to get a tomography here, I am going to pay the same for the study that if I buy a ticket to go to Merida. So she decided to buy the ticket to come here, and she's going to make this first trip to organize everything. So for us, it's better. For the patient, it's more comfortable. We can be more precise in this way, and sometimes the patients has the opportunity to make this kind of, to manage the things in this way. So if the patient has the opportunity, always is better this way, because when we see a patient, we can be more precise, talking about everything. In this way, we can be precise, but sometimes it's not the same when the patient is not talking about everything.
Okay.
I don't know if I explained it to me, if I answer your question.
Yeah, it was very clear, and yes, from the person that is in the asking me via WhatsApp.
And Jorge, remember that we have also a travel agency, like in Medical Connection. So we can get very good prices, a package, including the flight, the hotel, a tour, for example. So we really work together and we can get very good opportunity to travel, vacation, and also make your treatment.
That's great. Okay.
It's huge. It's huge. I am amazed how huge is the difference because, for example, very recently, one patient told me that she paid for some treatments that she got here. She paid here $700, and she told me that where she lives, that treatment was going to cost her $7,000.
That means it's just 10 times cheaper.
Yes, it's one more zero. One more zero. So try, if I don't know if you have any other question.
Yes, Dr. Guillermo, I have another question. For example, I went to Merida because I started with the first trip, putting the prosthesis, for example, no? But in that time, I want to approve the time and I decide to make a cleaning or whiting. Is it possible to fix it?
Yes, of course. That's why we try to know the expectations of the patient in this first video call. So this video call is for that, Yaros, to try not only to know the patient, because in that way I can know, well, it's not in person, but online, you can know the patient, and the patient can know the doctor or the people that is going to receive them when they are going to come. So this generates more trust before the first trip. So very important thing, this video call, to do that. In second thing, we try to see what the patient is looking for. Because like you said, Yaros, for example, if a patient tells us, okay, Guillermo, I want to get there the implants, but I am going to take advantage of that trip and I want to get a bleaching and I want to get a crown, or I want to get this, this, and this. So this video call or these two video calls work for us because in this way we can try to leave everything clear for the patient, because it's normal if you are not in the dental field or in the medical field, like, or as a patient, you're going to have a lot of questions. So these two video calls work for us to try to leave everything very clear for the patient before they come. Because sometimes a patient, and it's just an example, can believe, okay, probably in one trip of 2 weeks, I can get the full implant. So sometimes the patient can plan his or her trip in that way, but when he or she arrives, they are going to realize that probably they are going to require one more trip, or that trip is not going to be enough. So that's why, and probably I am going to be you are going to be a little bit tired because I repeat these 3 steps too much, but these 3 steps are the most important part of the treatment. Because these 3 steps, if the patient is not going to come here for a first trip of exploration, these 3 steps are going to help us a lot. These are going to guide, or these are going to put direction to the whole treatment. So trying to answer your question, yes, if a patient wants to get something here besides, for example, besides the implant, yes, they can do that. So it's very important for the patient try to be precise with what things they are going to get when they arrive in the first trip, because, for example, some of them have in mind, okay, I am going to come here to Mérida and I am going to go to Chichen Itza besides my dental treatment. But unfortunately, sometimes in order to make a good treatment For example, if you get wisdom teeth extractions, you can be in the sun, you can do exercise, you can smoke. So it's very important, try to take all these things in count before they come to. So that's why probably you are going to be tired, but that's why it's important, these 3 steps. Okay, so Jorge, these 3 things, we try to figure it out between Natalia, Yaros, and me. We try to figure it out, all these 3 things, before the patient comes. Because Natalia and Yaros probably are going to work in a different way if a patient wants to go to Chichen Itza, or if a patient wants to see an orthopedics guy, or if a patient wants to get another treatment. So we as a team are going to work in a different way depending on what a patient has in mind.
Well, that sounds interesting. I can take a vacation on summer for getting my diagnostics and then decide to go in the winter to make the treatment or something like that.
Yes, that actually, I guess that would be the best way to approach to this kind of things, because, okay, like you said, you can come here, you can be here 5 or 6 days. We can establish the whole treatment plan for you. We can make the appointments with the specialist. We can ask you for the studies. We can organize everything for your next trip. And you probably tell me, okay, Guillermo, and after these 6 days with you, I am going to go to Cancun, or I am going to visit Valladolid, or to visit Cozumel, or I am going to do this, and this. So in this way, I guess you as a patient can take advantage of that, because we are going to plan in a better way your treatment. And besides that, you are going to have time to visit all the things that you want to see.
That sounds great. In that sense, it's a mix of pleasure and medical treatment, dental treatment.
Sorry, what?
It's good to have like a trip for vacation, relax, enjoy, and have the dental treatment at the same time.
Of course, because not all the things are medical or dental treatments. It's important for us try to give a period of time for the patient in order to, because that, I guess this is the important thing in medical tourism. Sometimes the patient they don't have more time to visit more things or to make a pleasure trip, but sometimes, yes, sometimes the patient can leave a period of time in order to get relaxed, or in order to go to another place. So that's why it's very important, the planification of the whole treatment. Because probably I tell you, okay, Jorge, we are going to organize your 2nd trip or your 3rd trip to put the crown. But in this 3rd trip, you don't have to follow too many instructions like in this 1st trip, because this 1st trip, you're going to get a surgery. But in this trip, the process that you're going to get is going to be more relaxed. So probably we organize everything, and we give, and probably you tell me, okay, Guillermo, in this trip, and it's an example, I am going to be there for 1 month, 2 or 3 weeks to see you and to finish with my treatment, and 1 more week because I want to, I don't know, to go to Cancun, or I want to go to Riviera Maya, or I want to go to anywhere. So I am going to leave 1 more week. And anyway, if you put all together, it's going to be cheaper than try to get the whole treatment there. And you're going to have, plus you're going to have vacations.
Yeah, and the other choice is, I don't know how much also works for the people that wants to go for the summer, to spend the winter times in Mexico, than people that wants to go away of the snow in north of US or Canada, and they can do within the 3 months, they can be jumping back and forth into different areas within the Yucatan Peninsula, not necessarily to go back into your own town.
Yes, yes, of course. Actually, we have some patients that manage the things in that way. We have one patient that is going to come here on December, and he told us that he's going to be here for 3 months. So that is awesome for us because we don't have to be in a rush to make his treatment plan. So as soon as he arrives, we can make the checkup, we can figure it out how we're going to manage the drinks, and we're going to have 3 months in order to see the patient. And in that period, he can be here and he can know the town, he can go to other places. So I believe that is awesome, no?
Wow.
Yep.
So any questions so far?
No, well, that is a very interesting kind of environment, and really the people in the United States and Canada can take advantage of having this pleasure and treatment plan. Then is going to be very, very good one for them in a much better way than just traveling by itself to see the location, or having the treatments locally. Then you don't get the visit all the very spectacular places that are in Yucatan.
Yes, yes, of course. And that's in that part, Natalia and Jaros can help us because they already know all the logistics, they already know hotels, they already know a lot of things. And in this way, sometimes the patient doesn't have to be worried about all these things. The only thing that she or he has to do is contact them, for example, and tell them, okay, I am looking for this. I have this budget, I have this period of time, and based on that, we can try to figure it out how we can manage the things for the patient. So that's why, Jorge, is very important, the communication always. It's very important, try to be clear from the beginning. And with all the tools that we have right now, like Zoom, like this kind of thing that we're doing right now, like FaceTime, a lot of things, these tools can make us the life easier. And we can take advantage of all these tools to help to the people that doesn't live here. So unfortunately, a lot of people doesn't know how huge is the difference between a lot of things between, for example, Mexico and US or Canada. And the quality that they can get get here or in other parts of Mexico is amazing too. So they are going to get the same quality and with a lower price. Okay.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Excellent. So only to close this presentation, I am going to show you two more things. One is the work scheme for a root canal post bridges and crowns. This kind of treatment is very common too. And this involves usually 3 appointments. The first appointment is to make the root canal treatment. Actually, we can make this treatment in 1 day, in 1 appointment, usually. But we usually ask to the patients to be here for 1 week. This is to try to be sure that everything is good before they leave. But if they want to leave 3 or 4 days after they get the root canal treatment, they can do it. Remember that these times and these trips are only an average. So the second appointment is to place the post. The post is like a straw that we have to place into one of the roots of the tooth and works to give more strength to the tooth after they get a root canal treatment. Remember that after you get a root canal treatment, the tooth can be weak. So it's very important, leave the tooth very strong. because in that way you're going to be able to eat or bite hard things, and you're not going to be worried because you can break your tooth. So the post is done in one appointment, and the suggestion is to place the post in less than 1 month after the root canal treatment. Okay? Usually, when a patient lives here, we place the post between 7 to 10 days after a root canal treatment. And the third appointment is to make the crown or the bridge. Usually, we recommend 2 or 3 appointments spread across 2 or 3 weeks to finish with the whole process, because this kind of process are simple but involve a lot process. Remember that right now, wait me 1 second, because sorry. Remember that when with the situation right now, with the COVID situation, some business are taking more time in order to do the work sometimes that you require. So this kind of process are simple, but we involve a lab process. So it's important to follow the steps in order to make a good crown or a good bridge. Questions so far? The bridge is like this thing, are crowns together. And when you have, for example, 1 or 2 missing teeth, you place a bridge. So you shave the teeth that are on sides and you make the bridge in order to replace the missing teeth or the missing tooth that you have. It's another option for the when you have a missing tooth, for example. If you don't want to get an implant, you can get a bridge. Okay? So, questions so far?
No?
No? Okay.
I am ready to go there and
excellent. We can plan all the things for you, Jorge. Okay, and the last part of the presentation is veneers. I am going to talk a little bit about veneers. This kind of treatment is very common and is an aesthetic treatment. So is when a patient has the lower part of the smile. For example, if the teeth are very thin, very short, or because you have spaces between them. So you put these veneers. This veneers is like a nail that you put in the frontal part, in the frontal area of your smile. So with this, you are going to improve the appearance of your teeth. And this treatment usually requires 2 to 3 appointments. Duration, 2 weeks approximately, sometimes less, like I told you, but we like to tell the patient that 2 weeks. So if we can do the treatment in less, awesome, but I prefer to have more time with the patient. And the work involves a lab process too. So that's why we have to wait a period of time in order to finish with the whole treatment. Okay? Okay. This is the last part of the presentation. I hope, I know it's a little bit difficult when I give a lot of information and more if I talk about technical things. I hope I was clear. Anyway, if you have any question, feel free to ask me and I can answer that for you.
Well, I guess it's going to be a lot of people that is going to contact later. And I see several people has been contacting and asking very specific questions and say they need to figure out first by themselves. And that is one of the very interesting points, is how we need to have in the mind in order that I decide to go and take my treatment in Merida instead of doing locally in my city. That is something to be working in each person in that sense. And we need to have a very good contact with the people to keep nurturing the need, and whatever questions they have it, that can be answered by you, Guillermo.
Yes, of course. And like I told you, I know a lot of people that is close to the border of Mexico, they usually go there, but sometimes they only go, get the dental or medical treatment, and then they go back. The advantage that we have here is that we have a lot of things to know and to see, Jorge. I don't know if you have been here in Merida, but we have a lot of things very close from here, like Cancun, Izamal, very beautiful towns, very beautiful food. The beaches are amazing. You can go to Holbox. We have a lot of things to do here in Mérida. We have Chichen Itza. So the advantage that the people have when they come here is not that they are going to get a good medical or dental attention, is that they are going to take advantage of that, and they are going to be able to know a lot of things that we have here with a lower price. And if you put the plus that if someone doesn't want to worry about the hotel or the organization, Yaros and Natalia, they can help the people for that. So you have the whole package.
That's great. I really enjoy that, and it will be very, very good for the people in that sense to think about that. I don't know, as we're reaching the end of the time. I don't know if Yaros or Natalia wants to say some things before we close it. And thank you, Guillermo, for a wonderful conversation.
My pleasure. Thanks to you for the invitation. Thanks to you for the time, for your channel, and thanks again for inviting us. It was a pleasure for me and for the clinic. If in some point you and the people that is watching this program has any question, don't hesitate to contact us. We will be glad to help you.
That's great. Something to share,
Yes,
Natalia?
remember that the Dr. Guillermo Trujillo just talking about the common procedures. The team he has, they know different kind of procedures. So now it's a little short presentation, and we're talking about the common procedures. And also, Medical Connection has a lot of another group of medicals. It doesn't matter if it's orthopedic, spine, neurology, etc.
Well, that's great. And we will be talking about this subject later on into the other areas and other opportunities, and keeping the people interested in doing these things. And thank you very much, Natalia and Yaroslava, for helping us to educate the people and show that it is a great time to take care of yourself, traveling and enjoying at the same time. Thank you very much. And we say goodbye to the audience. Hay que ver, dice, bueno, oyeron el comentario.